Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're traveling back in time to ancient Mesopotamia, to a city so grand its walls were considered one of the seven wonders of the ancient world.
That's right. The walls of Babylon.
But these walls were much more than just impressive structures. They represented the very heart of Babylonian pride and dominance.
Oh, absolutely. The ancient texts describe Babylon as the center of the universe.
Wow, talk about ancient swagger.
And we're lucky to have historian Professor Lloyd Llewellyn-Jones with us today.
He's really uncovered some fascinating details from archaeological digs and ancient texts.
He has, and we'll be drawing on his expertise as we really bring these walls to life.
So listeners, get ready to have your minds blown because you won't believe the sheer number of bricks that went into these walls.
We're talking hundreds of millions.
Hundreds of millions, each one meticulously crafted and laid by hand.
Exactly. Try to imagine that kind of construction project in the ancient world.
It's mind-boggling. And we're talking about serious quality too, right? Nebuchadnezzar II, the king who really went all out on these walls, insisted on using kiln-fired bricks for maximum durability.
Oh yeah, he was serious about his construction projects. Kiln-fired bricks were much more resistant to the elements than the traditional sun-dried mud bricks.
It speaks volumes about his ambition to create a lasting legacy.
A legacy etched in clay.
Now let's talk about the evolution of these walls, because they certainly weren't built overnight.
Definitely not. The walls of Babylon have a long and fascinating history, stretching all the way back to the 18th century BCE.
So how did they actually develop over time?
Well, imagine it like this. Each time the city was conquered or destroyed, new rulers would come in and build upon the existing foundations.
Adding their own layer to the city's defenses?
Right. You could say the walls themselves are like a giant archaeological layer cake.
That's a delicious way to put it.
Archaeologists actually refer to this as tell archaeology. It's like a sponge cake with each layer representing a different period in the city's history.
Okay, that's a great analogy. But things really took a giant leap forward under Nebuchadnezzar II, right? He's the one who really transformed Babylon into this legendary megacity with walls that stretched for miles.
Absolutely. Nebuchadnezzar took city walls to a whole new level. He envisioned a double-layered system of fortifications that would be virtually impenetrable.
And how extensive were these walls?
Well, some ancient texts claim that it would take a full 4 hours to walk the entire circumference.
Wow. That's like walking a marathon just to circle the city.
It really gives you a sense of the sheer scale and ambition of Nebuchadnezzar's vision. It's hard to even imagine the manpower and resources required to pull off something so massive in the ancient world.
But it wasn't just about sheer size, was it? These walls were also infused with symbolic meaning and magical elements.
Oh, absolutely. The Babylonians believed in imbuing their walls with magical names and symbols to enhance their protective power.
You mean like those spells we mentioned earlier, the ones meant to ward off evil spirits?
Exactly. Those are called apotropaic names, and they were a common feature in Mesopotamian culture. The Babylonians took it to the extreme.
So it was like building in extra layers of protection, both physical and spiritual.
Precisely, the walls became a physical manifestation of their belief in the separation between the civilized world of Babylon and the chaotic forces lurking outside.
A tangible barrier against evil.
You could say that.
I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. So we've got these massive walls packed with symbolism and designed to make a serious statement about Babylonian power. But what about those famous gates? They weren't just simple openings, were they?
Not at all. The gates of Babylon were like portals of power, each one carefully positioned and named to reinforce the city's defenses and project an aura of invincibility.
Like a giant keep out sign.
More like, don't even think about it.
And then, of course, we have the most famous gate of them all, the legendary Ishtar Gate.
Ah, yes, the Ishtar Gate. Even its name was a declaration of power. Ishtar overthrows its assailants.
Just the name sends chills down your spine. Professor Jones described an incredible reconstruction of the Ishtar Gate at the Perga Museum in Berlin. Those vibrant blue tiles, the intricate decorations, the sheer scale, it must be breathtaking.
Oh, it is absolutely stunning. But there's a fascinating twist to this reconstruction. You see, it's not entirely authentic.
Wait, really? 80% of what you see is a modern recreation?
That's right. Archaeologists were only able to recover fragments of the original gate. The rest was meticulously recreated based on those fragments and historical records.
So it's more like an interpretation than an exact replica.
You could say that.
Yeah.
Which actually raises some interesting questions about how we perceive historical reconstructions. How much is based on solid evidence and how much is creative license?
It's a good point to keep in mind as we delve deeper into the world of ancient Babylon.
Exactly. It reminds us that history is a conversation between the past and the present, and we're always trying to piece together the full picture.
And what a fascinating picture it is. But before we get too carried away, let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll dive into the incredible animal figures that adorn the Ishtar Gate and explore the symbolic meaning behind those majestic creatures. Stay tuned.
And it reminds us that history is an ongoing conversation between the past and the present.
Always trying to piece together the full picture. And speaking of pictures, those animal figures on the Ishtar Gate are pretty incredible.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Those figures weren't just decoration. They held deep symbolic meaning for the Babylonians.
So let's talk about them. Professor Jones mentioned lions, bulls, and these fascinating creatures called Mushashu dragons.
Right. Each animal represented a different aspect of divine power and protection.
Starting with the lions, those magnificent beasts, what do they symbolize?
Well, the lions represented Ishtar, the goddess of war and love.
Ah, Ishtar. I remember reading about her. She was a force to be reckoned with.
Oh, absolutely, a powerful deity. And then you have the bulls.
The bulls, what about them?
Well, the bulls symbolized Adad, the god of storms and weather.
Okay, so lions for Ishtar, bulls for Adad. And what about those Mushashu dragons? They sound pretty fierce.
Oh, they were associated with Marduk, the patron deity of Babylon.
So basically they were calling on all their divine heavy hitters to protect the city.
Exactly. Each animal played a role in reinforcing the city's defenses, both physically and spiritually.
And the craftsmanship of those figures is incredible, right?
Oh, absolutely. The way they were crafted with those raised brick figures and alternating colors, it must have been truly awe-inspiring.
I can only imagine Professor Jones actually quoted another historian, Mark van der Meerhoop, who described the sensory experience of walking the processional avenue leading up to the Ishtar Gate.
Oh, yes. Van der Meerik's description is fantastic.
He talks about feeling surrounded by the goddess Ishtar as you walk among her lion symbols, and then confronting this massive blue gate adorned with dragons and bulls symbols of Marduk and Adad, protectors of the city.
It must have been an incredible experience.
Really powerful. But let's shift gears a bit and talk about the actual construction of the walls themselves, because we know it took hundreds of millions of bricks, which is just an astounding number.
It really is a logistical marvel to think about all the materials, the transportation, the labor. It was a massive undertaking.
And those bricks weren't just haphazardly thrown together, right? There was a lot of care and precision involved.
Absolutely. Most of the bricks were made from kiln-fired clay, which, as we mentioned earlier, was a significant advancement in terms of durability.
Nebuchadnezzar was clearly a man who valued quality.
Oh, yes. He wanted to create something that would stand the test of time.
And speaking of Nebuchadnezzar, Professor Jones actually found some bricks with his name and title stamped right on them.
It's amazing, isn't it? It's like ancient branding.
Each brick, a tiny monument to his power. But it's not all about Nebuchadnezzar. Professor Jones also discovered inscriptions from earlier kings like Naram-Sin buried within the foundations.
It's like peeling back layers of history, revealing the contributions of different rulers over time.
A testament to the continuity of Babylonian kingship. But even the most impressive walls faced challenges. And one of the biggest challenges for the Babylonians was rising damp.
Oh, yeah, that was a constant problem. Babylon was built on a floodplain with a high water table, so moisture was always trying to seep into those walls.
I can imagine that must have been a nightmare.
It was, but Nebuchadnezzar came up with a pretty ingenious solution.
What was that?
Bitumen.
Bitumen.
Yes. It's a naturally occurring tar-like substance that acts as a waterproof sealant. The Babylonians had been using it for other construction projects, but Nebuchadnezzar was one of the first to use it on such a massive scale.
So they coated the bottom of the bricks with bitumen to create a barrier against the moisture.
Exactly. Pretty clever, isn't it?
Ancient waterproofing at its finest. But even with all the bitumen in the world, empires crumble, and eventually the Babylonian Empire fell to the Persians, led by Cyrus the Great.
That's right. And what's interesting is that Cyrus actually boasted in his own inscriptions about repairing the walls of Babylon.
So even though he conquered the city, he saw the value in preserving its iconic walls.
Absolutely. Cyrus was known for his tolerance and respect for the cultures he conquered. He recognized the symbolic power of Babylon and its walls and saw them as a valuable asset to his own empire.
And remember, we're talking about Cyrus the Great here, a ruler known for his own ambitious building projects.
Exactly like the magnificent palace at Persepolis.
Right. And isn't it interesting that archaeologists have found evidence suggesting that Cyrus may have actually tried to recreate the grandeur of the Ishtar Gate at Persepolis?
There's a Babylonian-style gate there that bears striking similarities to the Ishtar Gate. So the legacy of Babylonian architecture clearly extended beyond Babylon itself.
It's incredible to think about how these ideas and architectural styles traveled and influenced other cultures.
Yeah.
But sadly, over time, even the most impressive structures crumble, and the walls of Babylon were no exception.
That's right. Over time, the walls were gradually dismantled.
Dismantled. What do you mean?
Well, those high-quality bricks that Nebuchadnezzar had so carefully chosen became too tempting for later builders to resist.
So they were pilfered for other construction projects.
Unfortunately, yes. It's a sad but common fate for many ancient structures. Their materials are simply too valuable to be left alone.
It's like being robbed by your own descendants. And I'm guessing the 20th century didn't do the walls any favors either.
Sadly, you're right. Military activity, particularly during the Iraq War, caused significant damage to the site. And then there's the whole story of Saddam Hussein's misguided attempts at restoration.
Oh, this doesn't sound good.
It wasn't. Saddam Hussein had this grandiose vision of restoring Babylon to its former glory, but his efforts were more about personal aggrandizement and propaganda than historical accuracy.
So what happened?
Well, he used modern materials and techniques that were completely out of sync with the original construction.
So it was more of a reimagining than a restoration.
You could say that, and it actually caused further damage to the already fragile site.
It's heartbreaking to think about such a historically significant site suffering so much damage, both from neglect and from well-intentioned but ultimately destructive attempts at restoration.
It is a tragedy. But thankfully, there is a glimmer of hope. There's ongoing archaeological work at Babylon, and this time it's being led by Iraqi archaeologists who are dedicated to preserving and understanding this ancient marvel.
That's wonderful to hear. It sounds like Babylon is finally getting the care and attention it deserves. But even though the walls may be gone, their legacy lives on.
Oh, absolutely. Their story continues to captivate our imaginations and inspire awe.
It's a powerful reminder of the enduring legacy of human ingenuity, ambition, and the cyclical nature of history.
And it makes you wonder what our legacy will be, what stories our own structures will tell future generations.
What will they say about us? It's a fascinating question to ponder.
Indeed it is.
Yeah, it really makes you think, what will our legacy be? What stories will our structures tell future generations?
Well, the walls of Babylon, even in their ruined state, still resonate with us. They become a symbol of so much.
Human ambition.
The rise and fall of civilizations, the footprints we leave behind.
It's a story that seems to tap into something deep within us.
I agree, this fascination with the past, the desire to understand where we come from.
And how we got to where we are today.
Exactly.
And it's amazing to think that for all our advancements, we're still connected to those ancient builders.
In a way, we share that same drive to create, to innovate, to leave our mark on the world.
You know, this deep dive has been a real eye-opener for me. I started out thinking about bricks and mortar, but I'm walking away with so much more.
Me too. It's incredible what we can learn from these ancient civilizations.
They really offer valuable insights into human nature, the cycles of history, and the challenges of building a just and prosperous society.
Don't they?
It's humbling to think that we tend to view ourselves as so advanced, yet those ancient Babylonians were grappling with many of the same issues we face today.
Like what, for example?
Well, climate change, political instability, social inequality, the search for meaning and purpose, it's all there in the historical record.
You're absolutely right. It just goes to show that we're not so different from those who came before us.
We're all part of this grand human story, this ongoing journey of discovery, creation, and, yes, sometimes destruction.
That's a great way to put it.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of ancient Babylon, I'm left with a sense of awe and wonder, but also a profound sense of responsibility.
Responsibility.
Yeah. What stories will our generation leave behind? What will our walls say about us? What kind of world are we building for future generations?
Those are important questions for all of us to consider. The walls of Babylon serve as a powerful reminder of human potential, both for incredible achievements and devastating follies.
This delicate balance.
It is. And just as those ancient walls embodied a worldview, so too do the structures we build today reflect our own beliefs and values.
It's a legacy we're creating every single day. And on that note, we'd like to thank you for joining us on this deep dive into ancient Babylon. We hope you found it as fascinating and thought-provoking as we did.
If you enjoyed this exploration, be sure to subscribe for more captivating journeys into history, science, and culture delivered right to your ears.
Until next time, keep exploring.